Open your scriptures to Revelation. As you open the Bible to Revelation, you're thinking, wow, we were in 1 John, now we're in Revelation. We're just there for one verse. That one verse is enough because we are at a cool time in the life of our church, a significant season. 1 year ago, we were in the middle of what's called All In. We launched it a year ago, a few weeks ago, and it culminated on April the 6th. And it was one of the defining moments for First Baptist. It really was and is. We're halfway through. It was a 2-year commitment. And so we're just kind of in the middle of saying, God, thank you for what you've done. It's amazing what's happened during these days. I believe it really set a course for us. And it sent a message about us. You see, First Baptist has had a great history. It's a church that's filled with wonderful history. 1871. I mean, only a couple of you were here when it started. Not going to call any names, but 1871, that's a long time. And yet God has been faithful. And we had an opportunity last year to make a statement. Are we going to forever just have memories? Or are we going to dream big dreams about the future? Because see, if the past is all you got, well, I hope you enjoy the memories. But thankfully, the past is not all we have. Because we believe the best days are ahead for First Baptist Orlando. And I mean all the way in the future. I looked up there and I watched these children leading us. I see children in the hallways. I see kids around the campus. And I always have this thought, I wonder if that could be the next pastor of this church. I think they're going to be a little older than that when they do. I'm not saying that. Josiah was 8 when he ruled Israel. Anyway, never mind. I just believe the generation behind us will see some incredible things. Just like those who went before us, who ran their race. Man, we're sitting in a room they built. We're on a campus that they had the vision to go after. And we all have been blessed by them. Now, there's another generation coming, and may the story be told of us. They served us, they sacrificed for us so that work could go on in our generation. I'm committed to that, and I believe those days are coming. And let me tell you the other side of that. The other side of that is death. If you're a Christian, either you're growing or you're dying. This idea of, oh, I'm just staying about the same. No, you're not. You're dying. You're either growing in the likeness of Christ, you're growing in your walk with Him, or you're dying. And the verse that I want you to look at in Revelation chapter 2 is a verse that was written by John, the same author of 1 John, when Jesus appeared to him on the Isle of Patmos where he was exiled for preaching the gospel. Jesus shows up and gives you some incredible message. It's called the book of Revelation. And there's a portion of it where he's sending a message to churches. There's 7 of them. I think the 7 represent all churches. I don't think that they represent ages. I think they represent all churches. And in this one, the letter to the church of Thyatira, there's this incredible statement. And I have found myself praying this one statement about us. The commendation you're about to read with me, there's one phrase in there that I have asked God, may this be us. So Revelation chapter 2. Verse 19, I know your works, your love and faith and service and patient endurance, and that your latter works exceed the first. Your latter works exceed the first. If you could ask me, David, what are you praying for that one day you will hear the Lord say? This is what I would love to hear Him say. Your latter works exceeded the first. You know what that means? You're getting better. We're growing. Growing in the likeness of Christ. We're more committed. We're going further with Him than we've ever been. That's what it means. Your latter works are greater than your former works. We're not one of those that peaked in high school, Rob Lowe kind of guys. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's always about what we used to be, what I used to could do. No, it's not a used to anything. It's what God is doing today and what we're going after in the days to come. And so my prayer is that, I said that the first Sunday I preached. Some of you were here, and you might have remembered this statement, but I actually said it. And a lot of people have reminded me of it. I made this statement. I said, my first year as your pastor will be my worst. So be gracious. And what do I mean by that? That first year was my worst, I pray, and the next year was better. But the next year was even better than that. Hey, this year will be worse than next year. Because the point is, we are moving. We are on a journey. We're a part of what God is doing, and the kingdom is marching on. It's just whether we're with Him or not, whether we're a part of what God is doing in this world or not. Do you realize that there are 250,000 churches in America? 250,000, sounds like a lot. Until you consider this. I mean, think about it. 250,000, we ought to have impact. Man, this country ought to be a strong Christian nation. Well, let me give you this stat. Of the 250,000 churches, 200,000 of them are dying. That give you a little better picture? 4,000 churches every weekend close the doors. Out of business. You know why? Irrelevance. Doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter anymore. It's just irrelevant. You know how many people leave the church every week? 3,500 people leave the church every week, give up on the church. Irrelevance. And that's what happens to you when you stay the same. And you never go after something. You never move with a vision. You never move with a dream. You're relying on history. You're relying on the past. You're looking at memories and all of that instead of going after what God may have for you. When the Dow Jones started, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average started, it was started on 12 companies. By the way, we are older than the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones started in 1882. There were 12 companies. You know how many are left today of the original 12 companies? One. Why? They refuse to change. Let me tell you, those of you in business, it's brutal. You change or you die. In other words, you stay on the cutting edge. You stay after it. You got to be hungry. It's the same for churches. We got to be hungry. We got to be saying, God, we want more of you. We want to see you do more. We want to see more lives touched. We want to see the gospel get to more people. So last year, during this season, we said we want to go on a journey of generosity that we think will allow us to see the latter works are greater than the former, because we believe it's going to open doors to things we've never been able to do, and it's going to absolutely cause this church to ensure the favor of God on us. And so last year, we started a journey. It's called a journey of generosity. Now, it's not a campaign. I know every once in a while we call it a campaign, but it's a slip of the tongue. It's not really a campaign. It's not a program. It's about a journey. It's called All In. A journey where all of us are in. And the goal of All In, follow me, was not money, was not a building renovation, was not a ministry in Madagascar or in Denver. The goal of All In was everyone who calls First Baptist home taking one step forward with God. Just taking at least one step forward with God. If we would do that, we believe we would be able to start a work in Denver. We believe we could start a work in Madagascar. We believe all the other things were the results or the consequences or benefits of. But the goal is and forever will be growing into the likeness of Jesus, taking a step in generosity. So that's what All In is. Now, we thought we had a really cool name, All In, when we came upon that name. And since then, marketers of companies must have heard about our All In. And they called and said, hey, can we use that, Pastor? Budweiser? Can we use All In? Adidas? Can we use All In? I mean, look at all. It's everywhere. Have you seen it everywhere? Isn't that amazing? They didn't really call me. I just want to make sure you know that. I mean, it's everywhere. It's on T-shirts. Somebody sent a picture with a bunch of Coronas iced down, and it said, All In. I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. That's a party at the church, isn't it? That's a new Lord's Supper twist. So, I mean, look, this everywhere, All In. But can I just say, I'm not sure what product they're all in about, but I can tell you what we're about. We are all in to go after Him. and to see that God's kingdom come on this earth as it is in heaven, to see His will done in us as it is in heaven, and to be everything we can be and be the best we can be. We are not going to slide into irrelevance. We are not going to plunge into one of those churches. We will not be one that litters the landscape of America that are absolutely out of business or non-effective at all. We will forever be a shining light with the gospel. As we were in 1871, so we shall be in the days ahead. And may it be said of us, our latter works are greater than our former works. We're getting better, folks. And it happened because we all took a step. Now, let me show you what that looked like. The journey has two aspects. One is generous living. The other is generous giving. Both of these are aspects of the same journey. That is one of generosity. And so what we did, we asked, where are you on the journey? Identify the step you're going to take. Because remember, the goal is everybody take a step. Just one step. The truth of it is we're at all different places. We're not all at the same place on these journeys. But one step matters, doesn't it? So let's start with how we want to spend our hours. Generous living. So we identified, okay, is your first step to say, this is for the first time, I'm going to be involved. I'm going to give hours away. I'm going to serve the Lord. Now, it wasn't just serving here. It's serving the name of our Lord anywhere. So many of you were involved in ministries all around this city, which is awesome. You were serving the Lord. That was the goal. And you took a big step, first timers. Then there were some that said, I'm going to be intentional. I haven't been intentional, just haphazard, but I'm going to get a plan, and I'm going to try to do something on a regular basis. Some of you got involved in things like beach clubs, where you have a regular planned schedule, and you go every Wednesday or whenever it is that yours meets. And then others said, I'm already doing that, but I just want to be more generous. And so you began to be generous, and then those of you that were generous said, man, I want to be even more generous. I want to serve even more. And so we asked you to give us the number of hours. And you did. You want to know how many hours over this 2-year period? Now we're halfway through, so we got a year to go. You know how many hours the people who call First Baptist home committed to serve the Lord? You ready for this? If you took it and added it up, nonstop, minutes, hours, days, months, years. It's 99 years. 99 years. That's 875,000 hours that the people of First Baptist said, we want to serve our Lord. 875,000 hours. Can we just give the Lord praise? What an unbelievable thought. And those hours are everywhere. I mean, people are serving everywhere. You're going to have an opportunity, you've already seen the card, to even increase what you want to serve, or for the first time, some of you to join us in that. I would love to get to 1 million. I would just love to be able to know that we committed 1 million hours in a 2-year period to serve our King. Because you know what? I got a question. Is He worthy of 1 million hours in a 2-year period? Is Jesus worthy of 1 million hours? Is there an answer? Yes, sir, He's worthy. He's worthy of every minute, every hour that we can possibly give Him. And it's all His anyway. But we just say, I want to serve Him. That's generous living. That's just giving ourselves away. The other part of the journey is generous giving. That's taking the funds and the resources God's given us. And we said the same thing. Everybody take at least one step. And so for many, that step was first time. For the first time, I'm giving. For the first time, I'm going to give to my church. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And so many took this step for the very first time. In fact, let me tell you how many. Over 1,000 said, we want to give for the very first time. And they did. And guess what? As a result, today, we have more people giving to the work through First Baptist Orlando than we can ever remember. I just thank God for those who took that huge step for the first time. So whoever you are, thank you. And I pray you have found that God blessed you because of that step. Some of you have been already involved, so it wasn't your step, first timer. No, it was intentional. I've been haphazard. I just throw a little money in every now and then. I want to get a plan. I want to get a goal. I want to be systematic. And so you became intentional. Thank you. Then others said, I want to be, I know the tithe is in the Scripture. I know it's a part of what the Bible teaches. It's just so hard. I want to get there. I had a lady come in, and she said, David, I've always tithed. She's a single lady. who's been through a horrendous time. She's been a single mom for a long time. And it was a very difficult marriage, very difficult circumstances. She said, I've always believed in the tithe. The tithe is basically the Old Testament principle of 10%. It was also a part of first fruits, meaning when you had an offering come in or you had crops come in, you take the first of the crops and you give them to the Lord. In other words, you don't wait till after all the crops are in and say, okay, what can I give to the Lord's work at the temple? No, they would give the first. So it'd be like us saying at the first of the month, hey, I want to give to the Lord first. I don't want to wait till the end of the month to figure out how much I got left to give. That pretty well says God's number last. He's now number one because I give him what's left over. She said, I knew that principle, and I knew that's what I needed to do, but it was so hard to get there. So she said, I made a commitment to God. I'm going to give the first check of every year. The first check that I get, she said, Pastor, I made a commitment to do it because I'd seen God's blessing on my tithing. I just said, I'm going to do first fruits. I'm going to give the first check. She said, I just had no idea that my commission this year, the first check, was the largest ever in my life. And she's sitting there in front of me. And she said, and I have it in my hand. And she said, believe me, I have fought this, but I made a promise to God, and God has been faithful to me. So, Pastor, please take this. And I listened to that, and I looked at her, and I said, well, this is awesome. This is a part of All In. And she goes, what's that? I said, you haven't heard of All In? She said, no, I was probably out or wasn't in church during those days. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, there are people who really, they didn't know. But she was already on the journey. And they didn't know about it. Hey, I don't care what you call it. We call it All In, but you call it whatever you want, but God calls it obedience. And he blesses and honors it. And she gave it. I saw her this morning. She looked great. She introduced me to her daughter. She looks wonderful. And God has been so faithful to her. Some of you, that step was to say, I'm going to tithe. Now, the tithe in the Scripture is not the ceiling. It's not the ceiling. But it is a standard by which God allowed his people to participate in the work of him at the temple. Beyond that were offerings. There was much beyond that. So some people said, hey, I've been tithing, but I really believe that God has been faithful and I'm to be generous. So they took a step of generosity and said, I want to be generous. And then some who are already generous said, no. God has been so good to me. I want to be more generous. And so as a result, in identifying the step we were taking, we took this huge step. And the results, 3 of them. Number 1, amazing what God has done through this church in this year. Amazing. Because when a church follows God like that, when a church is committed to God to follow him and to take those steps and the latter works be greater than the former, then let me tell you what happens. God moves. A city is changed. There's a light on the hill. And I mean, people know and they see something happening. I know you've walked around and you've seen building stuff. That's not really the main thing of All In. You know, we now have a church in Denver, Colorado because of All In, because you gave, because you took a step. We now have a work in Madagascar. We got a people group called the Antamora that had never heard the gospel or had little access. We now have one of our own, Ansel, who is there. And I want you to celebrate both of these, just to pick 2 of them, by video. First, from Ben Mandrell from Denver, Colorado. And secondly, all the way from Madagascar. And here's what I want you to do. As you watch this video, I want you to know this. You are a part. These people, they're your people. You have blessed their life through your commitment to All In. Watch this.
Hey, Pastor Bill and all of our friends at First Orlando, our sending church. We're trying to make you proud out here in the Mile High City, and we just got to praise the Lord for some of the great things that are happening. As you probably heard, on February the 8th, we launched the church with our grand opening, and we're just shocked to see 2 full services. We had about 400 adults, about 100 kids show up that day, and we've been trying to keep up with the madness ever since. We've had some great weeks of worship. We've had folks come forward. They want to know about how they can join, how they can get involved in ministry, how they can give and serve. Next week, we're going to have our first Discover Storyline class. We've already got over 35 people signed up who are ready to join, connect, and get involved. We're also launching our home groups in March. In our home groups, we're going to huddle up into homes across the city of Denver where we're going to be talking about the sermon, what God's doing in our lives, how we can pray for one another. That's going to be the depth of the church. So pray for our home groups as they launch and get off the ground. Recently, just this last Sunday, we baptized our first group of people, and it's such an exciting day to see the first fruits of what you envisioned and dreamed of years ago when you began to say, what if we planted a church in Denver, Colorado? Well, dreams are coming true out here. The vision's coming together. And we hope to see some of you out here on Denver soil soon. Keep praying for us. We love you all.
Greetings from Madagascar. Thank you for your all-in giving over the past year. Your faithfulness to the mission of First Baptist has allowed us to start some incredible ministries among the Anti-Muru people. We are reaching new villages with the gospel. We are arranging scripture verses to musical melodies to teach the word. We are having amazing results. God has been faithful to the work here. He's taking your prayers and sacrificial giving and changing lives 10,000 miles away. We hope you can come and see us soon and work with us together firsthand. It's an incredible mission trip that First Baptist offers many times during the year to come to Madagascar. If you've always wanted to take a mission trip, this is a place you would love to come.
Isn't that awesome? Unbelievable. And I mean, my favorite part, just the baptism. Did you see that? Did you see those people being baptized? Both in Madagascar and you had a part in that. I had a part in that. One day, one of those kids in that village may run up to you in heaven and say, thank you for giving. Thank you for your commitment because the gospel came to my village. I mean, in Denver, to see it. And was that a horse trough that I saw in the baptism? Wonder where they got that idea. Did we send a horse trough out there, Danny? They bought him one there. It had a symbol. Was that Spider-Man on the end of it, or what was that? Yeah, well, there's something on the end of it. Man, when I saw that video, I'm like, oh my goodness. I get to be a part of it. When I wrote the check out this morning, I wrote it out before 7 o'clock this morning. I thought, what are the things that this is going to help? And I just saw 2. Let me give you another one. TV ministry. You see, we don't realize it right now. This weekend, there will be 40,000 homes that view the programming here at First Baptist. 40,000. 40,000. So I'd like to ask a question in each venue. Would you raise your hand if one of the first times you saw this church was through television or streaming? Just raise your hand. Here in Faith Hall, Student Center, over in Henry Chapel. Raise your hand. Unbelievable. Thank you. 40,000 homes. 40,000 families that see it. And then not to count the 800 online streaming each week. So what happened was All In enabled us to upgrade. And I have never seen cameras that picked up so much stuff on me. When they said HD, we need to go to it, I'm not sure we do. Yes, we do. You need to see the real thing, and it's raw, and it's not good always, but it's the real thing. Now, the fact that we did that, did you know a lot of the online viewers made that happen? They joined us. They contributed with us in a thing called Keep the Cameras Rolling. So I want to thank those that are watching, whether by stream or you're watching by TV broadcast. You have no idea the blessing that was to us. And now because of that, we're able to launch new programming. We're able to do even more. We have new airing times, new stations, a new name, and all of that is with this commitment. We want to somehow connect with those people. Think about 40,000 homes. If we connected to just 1%, do you realize that's 400 families? You say, what do you mean connect? I don't know. Maybe we get them in a home Bible study in their neighborhood. Or we begin to develop a relation with them somehow. I just think it would be awesome. I know the online viewers, those who are streaming right now, you're all over the world. It absolutely boggles my mind that we have the technology for you to watch us right now all over the world. And you know what? If we have the technology, well, then let's use it for the glory of our God and get the gospel to as many as we can. Isn't that amazing? I mean, you can watch it on your phone, you watch it on your iPad, or whatever device you got, you're watching. This morning, I met a lady whose family started coming to this church because they saw us on television. And they started coming and got involved. Man, they love it here. They're faithful. I've been in their home, prayed with them in their home. And they told a family member of theirs who lives in Rock Island, Illinois, hey, Gretchen, you ought to start streaming. I know you live up there and you obviously can't be here. We're not on TV in Rock Island, Illinois, unfortunately, maybe one day. But what you could do is start streaming. So guess what? She did. But the best part of this story, Gretchen not only started watching us on the stream, she has now given her heart to Jesus Christ because of that broadcast. So this morning, I got to meet her. I mean, she was sitting right here, right up close. I got to meet her. I got to hug her. I got to tell her story. And you know what? It's people like that are the result of All In. People who benefit by our taking a step on this journey. So that's the first result. The second one, you'll never be the same. We will never be the same. The stories of what's happened is people have been giving and people said, hey, I'm going to give hours, I'm going to give my money, and then all of a sudden God begins to bless them. It's unbelievable. I want you to listen to this, Luis and Jeanette, and what God did. And they were, by the way, very afraid, as you will see. But they went ahead, they took a step of faith, and God honored it. Watch this.
I did not grow up in church. We attended church like on Sundays, and it wasn't until I really met my husband Louis that I really got to understand and meet Jesus. When we were at the service for the All In, I looked at my husband and he was writing on the Bible, and I know that when my husband writes on the Bible, it's something that is very serious. So I got a little bit nervous and I started thinking, how are we going to be able to do this? But then I understood. We prayed. My husband showed me and always have talked to me about the importance and the principle that it's not ours, it's the Lord's. And I let it go to God. And since then, we have been very, very blessed.
Cuando empezó todo lo del pastor del All In, todos incluidos, pues para nosotros era bien importante. Y al ver la enseñanza del día final, que fue para hacer ese compromiso en un papel, yo sabía que habíamos diezmado por algunos años un dinero. Yo dije, yo quiero ir más allá, yo quiero convertir esto en una aventura de fe para nuestra familia. Y nos comprometimos extra, básicamente el doble, de 2 años, porque era de 2 años. Para sorpresa mía, este año que acabó, el año 2014, la bendición ha sido tan grande que hemos podido decir que casi cuando finalizamos el año, hemos cumplido lo que yo prometí casi por 2 años.
It's a miracle. My journey with All In has impacted me in so many ways. I've seen it from the beginning, how our church have grown and all the different ministries, and I think that it's awesome. I am very, very proud and I'm very excited to see what's next in All In.
De yo saber que mi dinero, lo que yo trabajo, lo que yo aporto, se va a ver para que otros se conviertan, para mí es un orgullo. Yo le agradezco a Dios todos los días por haberme hecho parte de esta aventura de fe.
So you know what's a cool part of that story? Jeanette and Luis right now are streaming it live in Puerto Rico. So there you go. They're there, they're able to watch as their testimony was being shared because of streaming, and it's because of their faithfulness and the faithfulness of many just like them. Now their life has been changed. Their life has been profoundly impacted. Let me read, I've gotten so many. Your stories are amazing. If I had to summarize it, let me tell you what I would summarize all of the stories of All In. Here's how I'd summarize it. You can't outgive God. You just can't outgive God. I have yet to read a story. Man, we made a commitment and we gave, and now we have nothing and God has abandoned us. I hadn't read that story. Hadn't read it yet. In fact, I've been doing this a long time and I've never read one like that. The scripture says, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their seed begging for bread. God honors those who honor him. Listen to this. This is a couple. When my husband and I discussed filling in our all-in commitment card, we had no problem estimating our volunteer hours. But how do you fill in a financial commitment, the generous giving, when you're both unemployed? Okay? How do you figure that in? We decided to take the amount we gave last year and increase it by 20%. And then the second year, we would increase another 20%. We were trusting God completely. That is an understatement. They're unemployed. And yet they believe God wanted them to be all in. They said, no, we're going to be a part of this. And so they made the commitment, unemployed. After they made the commitment, the way this ends, they both got jobs on the same day. And they said, now, we're not going to do what we plan to do. We're going to double what we plan to do because God allowed us opportunity. They have jobs. Isn't that amazing? I just think God heard and God honored that. So our lives are being changed by this. That's another consequence. We're never the same because we took a journey and it has changed us. The third consequence is an unintended consequence. In fact, it's the one I'm most reluctant to talk about. We have some who said, don't want to go. We're not going to be a part of this. And there are those who've come to us since then that might say the same. So let me just tell you, as the pastor, my goal is every one of us. And I'll die trying on that one. Because why would I want to say, okay, it's okay if half aren't participating or a third? It's no big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal. Why would I want just 2/3 of you to be blessed? Like, for example, today in the venues, okay, you guys in the student center, we really don't care about y'all. We're just asking God to show up right here. That wouldn't go over well there, would it? Or in Henry Chapel, you guys don't really count. You don't really matter. We want God here. We want God to work right here. That would be ludicrous of a pastor to say that. Well, I'd be saying the same thing if I looked at you and said, it's no big deal. If you're not a part of this, no big deal. Yeah, it is. Because I want you to experience every blessing that God has in store for those who obey him. If God speaks, do it. There was a man in the New Testament who didn't. And I want to tell you a story. His name is Judas. Now, Judas has a lot of theological barbs. Follow me. There are people who think that Judas in the New Testament, the one who betrayed Jesus, you'll find the story in Matthew 26. Some think he was a puppet and God had planned for him to be the one all the way from the beginning. He didn't have a choice. Wrong. He did have a choice. Was it a part of a plan? Yes, it was. But Judas was with Jesus, and he walked away. Now, there's another barb on Judas. That is, Pastor, are you trying to say that if we don't participate in all in, we're like Judas and we're going to die and go to hell? No. Never would say that to you. In fact, don't even remotely connect those. It's kind of like being at Chick-fil-A this week. I drove up to Chick-fil-A, and if you order the chicken strips and there are the 3 count, and you get a meal and the fries with it, you know what your total's going to be? 666. When they said it over the little speaker, I said, excuse me? Said, that total will be 666. I said, no, it won't. And I drove around. And I got up to the window and I said, what did you say? And they're all kind of laughing in there. I said, did you say 666? Yeah, I said, I'm not giving you 666. Now, I could make a big deal out of Chick-fil-A, a Christian company, and they now have 666 in their... No. You got to be careful not connecting dots that aren't there. But I believe Judas had every opportunity to see what Simon Peter saw. And that's the grace and forgiveness of Jesus. And what makes his story so tragic is he was so close, but he missed it. I mean, he had one of the things, personal privilege. He was there with Jesus for 3 years. I mean, he ate every meal with him. They camped around the fire. They heard teaching. He heard the same thing every other disciple heard. Even John that wrote 1 John, he heard the same thing John heard. And I think sometimes there are people who think that showing up in the church is enough. Oh, I don't need to do that. I'm just showing up. Hey, I'm doing my thing. I thought that. If you want to know a story of somebody who was really close and missed it, here I am. Grew up in a preacher's home. Born on the third row of a Baptist church. I mean, literally, I've been in a Baptist church all my life. I've swam in baptistries. I've, gotten all the Lord's Supper juice and just slammed it, man. I've been all over the holy things, but they were common to me. And I was there every Sunday. Proximity is not our goal. Our goal is not to get you in a building. Our goal is to make you a disciple of Jesus Christ. So it's not just about being close. Judas was close. But that's not enough unless you're playing horseshoes and hand grenades. Proximity means nothing. And so here he is, 3 years right by Jesus' side, and he misses it. You know his story. He made a deal with the priest, the chief priest. I'm going to betray Jesus. I'm going to identify Jesus, and I'm going to kiss him, and you'll know it's him. Arrest him. He goes to the Garden of Gethsemane the night before Jesus was crucified. He walks up to him. Jesus looks at him and says, "Friend, do what you came to do." Calls him friend. And he greets him with rabbi, and he kisses him, and immediately they arrest Jesus. He took those 30 pieces of silver rather than going shopping. All of a sudden, the guilt came upon him, and the conviction came upon him, and it was killing him. He went back to the chief priest, and he said, "Here, I've made a mistake. I betrayed innocent blood." And they said, "What is that to us?" Judas went out and hung himself because he could not deal with the mistake that he had made. Another reason Judas is so tragic is because his mistake was no worse than another man named Simon Peter. Simon Peter denied him 3 times. I mean, and my goodness, Judas at least said, "This is the guy." Simon Peter said, "I don't even know him," and even cursed to try to throw him off his trail, to say, "Oh man, there's no way I know this guy," and even cursed. So they both equally sinned before God. They both broke the heart of God. One of them commits suicide. The other comes back and preaches at Pentecost 50 days later after the resurrection. And 3,000 people follow Christ. He writes a book, 1 Peter, 2 Peter. He's all throughout Acts. He is one of the heroes of the church. So, Judas, what happened to you? It's a thing called grace. You see, I believe if Judas had gone to the cross and looked at Jesus hanging on the cross and said, "Jesus, I've made a terrible mistake, and I'm wrong. Would you please forgive me?" I believe Jesus would have looked at him and said, "Yes, I will, and yes, I do." But he never went. And see, I just think his story could have been different. I believe we came to a point as a church where we had to make a choice about how the story goes. And we made the right choice. And I'm begging you, make that choice. If God speaks to you and says, "I want you to be a part of this, and I want you to take this journey," by all means, let's take the steps together. Don't miss it. And I guess grace to me, you know what grace means? It means it's never too late. I remember well the night in a dorm room with an ankle blown out, ready to go to the hospital to have surgery the next day. I'm looking at the ceiling, and I hear the voice of God. I literally hear him speaking to me about his love. And this is what I said. I said, God, I've done too much. I've walked away and I've just broken your heart too many times. And there's some in this room that feel that way. You feel like, well, it's too late, man. I wasn't here for it. I've done stuff that I shouldn't have done. Let me tell you what grace means. It means it's never too late. Do you notice they don't award medals at the beginning of a race? They award them at the end. Because how you finish is a lot more important than how you start. And I want to invite you to take a journey with us. And I want to invite you to finish strong and join what God is doing. So you listen to the Spirit of God. Listen to this testimony. She wrote, I sat in service today holding my all-in card, afraid to make a commitment, convinced that it would be better to do it later. I listened, I prayed, I decided to go ahead and take that step of faith, even though I was very afraid. I really wanted to tithe because I know it's right, but it would mean I didn't have enough money for rent or bills. I've been trying to be faithful, but don't always follow through because I would be short on paying bills. So I was afraid. I didn't want to let God down. I now know those fears were not from God. They were from the enemy keeping me from committing. So I took a leap of faith. I filled out that card. I dropped it in. I felt so relieved after I did. I went out and I got in the car, and the Lord told me, don't be afraid. He said, even if you fall short and it gets tough, I still love you, and you're going to be okay. She said, when I got in the car, I got a text immediately from a family friend, and I began to weep very hard. My daughter was so afraid, I had to gather myself and tell her, it's okay, honey. These are tears of joy. There was an area in my life that I needed help. And I'd been asking and asking and asking for help, and no answer. But the very moment I left the room and got in my car, the answer to the prayer came. It was a text letting me know that help was on the way. I had uncontrollable emotion, because I realize now God was all over this. And my conviction is that my prayer was answered immediately after I took a step of faith. And I made that commitment to God. Here's how she closes it. Sometimes we lose our way, and it's hard finding our way back. Thank you for being a part in finding the way back. I met her last night for the first time. Oh my goodness. The journey she's been on and what she has seen God do, all because she came to that moment and said, God, I know it's what you want. I'm going. I'm going to do it. So we want to have an opportunity for all of us to hear God and to say, God, what is it you want? You've got a card in your bulletin. Looks like this. It's just simply a card that says the all-in journey. Now you notice it's divided. At the top it says, I'm beginning the journey. That obviously is for those of you that have not been a part, you weren't even here, or maybe for whatever reason you weren't a part. It doesn't matter. The reason doesn't matter. All that matters is, hey, you're looking at it now. We're here now. What is it that God would want you to do? And here's what it reads. Generous living. What is it? What's your step that you're going to take in how you spend your hours? And circle the step you're going to take. And then, can you guess what the number of hours would be? Now remember, we only have 1 year left. So total up the hours for a year you'd like to set as a goal. I'm going to do this many, I'm going to serve this many hours somewhere. I'm going to serve the Lord this many hours. Then, generous giving. The other aspect is, what is the step I'm going to take in my giving financially? You circle that step and then try to give an idea, what would that represent for a year? Because roughly, we are from now until April 2016. So what does that look like for a year? Set yourself a goal. Now, for those of us who've already been on the journey, we've already said, hey, we're in, and we've made the commitment, there's the next section. It basically says, as I continue the journey, I will fulfill my commitment, finish strong. That's awesome. That's what God is saying to you, do it. Or he could be saying, increase my total all-in commitment. And so if that's the case, let us know what is the additional amount. You don't have to go back and say, well, this is what I pledged. No, no, no. It's not a pledge. It was simply a goal you set for yourself. And so if there's an additional amount, just put the additional amount on there. You don't have to put the whole thing. Now, if the name and information at the bottom is a problem, if it's a conviction, I don't need to put my name on this, I don't want to put my name on this, don't put your name on that. We would rather you take the journey with us than to miss it because of something like that. Don't do it. Don't write your name on there. If you can, do. But we respect the way each person relates to what God is saying. Now, here's what we're going to do with these. We just got them out today so you could pray. So all I want you to do, you don't fill in anything today. You just take it home this week. You spend a little time and you look at it and you're praying about it. Next weekend, when we come, we will begin the service here. We'll begin it in the Student Center, begin it in Henry Chapel. And then, not long into the service, we're going to make a march over to the new room. You will have an opportunity to leave these at what will be the altar. Right now, it's just concrete. It's cool, but it's just concrete. And so you're going to have an opportunity to take this card and leave it at an altar that will, as long as that building exists, and as long as you exist, you can look at that altar and say, when it was still concrete, I made a commitment. And you'll never forget that commitment. And it's only right that we do it in there because that's a part of what has happened because of the journey we have taken together. So you got it? You take the card home, you keep it this week, bring it back, but we're going to be ready for you. We'll have new cards because we know how that goes. We have a card for you. And next week is going to be unbelievable. Now, you know also next week we not only turn a card in, but we write on the floor our scripture. And we write the name of somebody we're praying for. I mean, how cool would it be that one day when we tell the story of All In, there are going to be names that are on that floor that are now a part of our fellowship. And we remember the day we wrote the name down. It's going to be unbelievable. Next weekend is one of those weekends you don't want to miss. But right now is a moment we can't miss. What is God saying to you right now?